Welcome back to another episode of Outwitting Statistics in Search of a Better Business, where we unpack tips, tricks, hacks, and ideas from highly successful entrepreneurs to discover how we can outwit the statistics and not have our own business go under. Today, I am joined by Andy Audate. Sorry. And he runs a company called Progreda. And I'm going to turn it over to him real quick so he can tell you who he is and what he does. And then we're going to jump into the questions.
So today, thank you so much, Craig, for creating this opportunity, man. And first and foremost, so I help different business owners grow and scale their business, primarily in the SaaS space. So I help people who sell software want to grow their business by selling more units. And I typically teach them on how to follow our webinar method. But I mean, before that, Craig, at 19 years old, I was the youngest T-Mobile franchise ever in T-Mobile history. So I opened up 4 locations with T-Mobile. By 21, I made my first $1 million. I left that industry because I started seeing the social media landscape and starting seeing businesses grow. So I started a marketing agency in 2016, and I've been growing ever since then. And we generated millions, but most importantly, we help our customers to generate much more than we create. And the way that we do that is through our systems and technologies.
So you've done a thing or two. You ran a franchise successfully. That's not a joke. That's an interesting arena. We'll dig into that a little bit. And now you're tackling SaaS, which is arguably one of the greatest opportunities that have been around in the last decade, at the very least.
For sure.
The back-end system you're using, I know a little bit about that, and it's amazing. I like where that's going. So before we talk about where you're at right now, let's do what we usually do. We're going to rewind into the past. We're going to see if there's anything that was an indicator early on for Andy that allowed him to grow and be successful, whether that's opportunities or characteristics. So let's rewind to, let's say, 7 or 8 years old. That's where we start kind of establishing our own personality. And tell me a little bit about who Andy was as a child.
So as a child, man, it all started for me when my dad went to New York, and he said, Andy, I'm going to go to New York to buy sneakers. I'm from the East Coast, small state in the country. And in the small state of the country, Rhode Island, I was raised in a small city, literally 1 square mile from one end to the other. 1 gas station, 1 high school, very, very small city. And my dad said to me, he said, Andy, I'm going to go to New York, which that means I'm going to go shopping because that's where the cheap clothes were. And when he gets to New York, he's going to go buy clothes. And he said, what do I want to get? I said, Dad, get me the Nike Air Forces. You know, the mid-tops with the swoosh, with the Velcro, with the swoosh. I said, Dad, get me one of those Nike Air Forces, man. I want to look good in 6th grade. I want to be the man. And I know if I get those, I'm going to be the man. I'm going to get all the girls. And my dad came back a couple of days later, man, and he didn't have the shoes. And I said, Dad, what happened to the shoes? He said, I didn't have enough money. And I said, okay, got it. My mom taught me, my dad taught me something practical, which is if you want it, go get it. So I went out because I'm in the snow. I'm in the East Coast. There's snow in the wintertime. And I went out door knocking, and I said, hey, can I shovel your yard? Can I rake your leaves? Got $10 a pop. Just a bunch of yeses and more no's than yeses, but a bunch of no's as well. And people gave me an opportunity to shovel for them. So I made $10. I stacked $160. I started ironing the money because it was my money. I ended up never buying the shoes because it was my money that I would have to spend now. So, but it taught me something very valuable, which is I can go and get it if I wanted to. And that's what started my entrepreneur journey, man. It really was that incident.
It's funny, of all the interviews that I've done or other entrepreneurs that I know and hang out with, there's usually always some kind of micro moment in your childhood that kind of sets you on that path. I think mine originally was probably because I wanted a dog. Same thing. I started saving any money that I got my hands on, that I found on the street, that people gave me, and stacked those dollars back until I got the dog that I wanted, which was an expensive dog at the time. This would have been almost, 25 years ago, and probably spent $400 or $500 on the dog. And just having a taste of having your own money changes the game. Like you said, you're like, I don't want the shoes anymore. I'm gonna spend it on something else. That's interesting.
That's how it's for many of us, huh?
It really does. And I think it's usually a pretty good indicator of whether you're the right fit. And I'm curious, I haven't asked everybody this, but I'm going to ask you. I don't think everybody that starts a business necessarily is an entrepreneur or should be in business. I think that's part of the reason we have the statistics we do. And that's not a bad thing if you find yourself in a business.
What are the statistics on failure of entrepreneurship?
I have them written down somewhere. I can pull them. Let's see. Failure in business for first 5 years. I think we have it written down. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years of opening, 45% during the first 5, and 65% by the end of 10 years. Only 25% of businesses will make it to 15 years or more.
1,000 businesses start today. In 10 years, 650 of them are going to fail.
Correct.
It's sad. And I think that there's a common trend, man, on like business hopping. I was just in the Philippines. I have staff in the Philippines. I have staff all over the country, all over the world, but I have a group who was my core team in the Philippines, and we were doing a company retreat in the holidays a few weeks ago. And when I was with them, I started to, they said something along the lines of like, hey, let's island hop. Let's hop to different islands. Let's touch a little bit of this island and let's go to that island and that island and that island. And it led me to think about somehow the way that some entrepreneurs think, like, let's business hop. Today's Bitcoin, tomorrow SaaS, and the next day after that is cell phones. The day after that is SMMA, social media marketing agency. Tomorrow's the week after that, it's a website design company. And then you're business hopping, and then 10 years pass, and then you end up realizing like you never built anything. There's nothing that you own that's an actual asset. You have had just 15 different side hustles every year. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many businesses are failing, is because people are hopping to different opportunities.
I've definitely observed that even with the clients that we work with. I've got certain home service businesses that have come to me and been like, I'm going to start a new credit repair business or this thing or that thing. And I'm like, why don't we fix the things in your current business and make it better? And it really comes down to focus times force equals impact, right?
Yeah.
If you're spreading yourself thin or you're not putting enough energy or effort into the thing, it's not gonna succeed. Do you see that with your clients quite a bit? And if you do, how do you coach them around that? For anybody who's listening, how would you coach them if that's what they're doing?
So since 2017, our agency has served over 5,500 clients. And the clients that I noticed that are between 150 or 50 grand or less, $150,000 or less, they're the ones who would typically hop on different opportunities. So today, they're a coach.
Is that a year we're talking about, just for clarification?
Yeah, 150,000 a year.
Okay.
150,000. So I don't know how much that's per month, but 150 grand a year, that's when they do the hopping. If you're making over 150 grand, then you're pretty much stable. They're stable on working with us because they were clear from the jump. They're stable on their payment because they passed the $150,000 mark. And what I noticed is that there's a commitment period at the beginning of every business that I've seen. There's this period that spiritual people will call the valley, right? You have peaks and valleys, and the valley in the beginning is very low. So this commitment period is a time where I believe like God is asking you in that moment, like, are you actually committed to this journey? And there's anxiety during this time. There's challenges during this time. There are changes that you got to do during this time in your business to make it operate. You started off with an idea, and then for 6 months it doesn't work, and during that 6 months is your commitment period. And that's when you got to make a decision. Do I commit or do I do something else? During the commitment periods when most entrepreneurs are leaving, that I'm seeing that are doing less than 150 grand, they're leaving their journey and they're doing something else. And then they hop onto another project and they think that there's not going to be a commitment period. And every single opportunity has this commitment period. Everyone's commitment period is going to be different. Some could be 6 months, some is 90 days, some could be 3 years. But the commitment period will always be there, which is why you see a company, an entrepreneur who does $1 million, they start a new venture, and that business does $1 million again. Why? Because they understand the commitment period and they understand all the challenges that's going to happen along the journey. Technology may change, processes may change, product may change, offering may change, staff may change, but the journey is going to be the same for everyone. And that commitment period is the start of it all. So most entrepreneurs who are 7-figure entrepreneurs, they start a new venture. They're like, hey, I already know it's going to be tough in the beginning because it was tough on every single venture that I've ever done. But once I stick through, I figure out product market fit, I figure out my offer, I figure out the technology, I figure out the tech stack, I figure out the team. Everything's going to work, and I'm going to go through that commitment period, and I'm going to create a tremendous amount of success in this business. And then people are going to look at that person and say, for some reason, John is always lucky. And no, he stayed in the game. That's what the difference is.
As Gary Vee says, put that luck shit back in your pocket.
That's a good quote, man. That's awesome, man.
That's a damn good quote. I love it. It's stamped on one of the hoodies that I wear. I want to dig into that a little bit more. So what Andy's saying is whenever you're starting a new business, it's going to be difficult. And probably that's the time you're most vulnerable because you have invested the least. And so the further in you get, the harder it is to give the thing up, right? Because you've invested all this time and energy. At this point, if I were to shut my company down, oh man, that would hurt incredibly bad because I've invested blood, sweat, tears literally into this thing, right? So that investment is lower at that point, and likely, and this is a symptom no matter what kind of business you're in, I think, and I want your take on this, Andy, is you're probably looking around and you're seeing these people that just got into this thing and in a couple of months are having this success. But the problem with that is your observation of that, you don't see the 10 or 15 years behind them. You know, somebody that's really good at sales because they were a car salesman before they left. So there's problem number one. You're being lured away from the thing you committed to because it looks like, well, you could get faster success somewhere else, but you're not seeing the full picture. And then number two, I think has to do with, I don't want to explain this. We as entrepreneurs, unless you start out an entrepreneur, right? You start out doing something entrepreneurial. You're working for somebody else. We are rewarded for quitting. I've heard somebody else talk about this. You're rewarded for quitting, right? You have to quit your job to go start your thing, and then we immediately need to unlearn that skill. And so we develop that skill of feeling confident that we can quit something, but then you immediately need to get rid of that skill set. And then you need to be ruthless about committing to the thing you're going to do. Do you agree?
I think that there's a level, Craig, of entrepreneurship that's becoming popular. It's kind of like when I grew up and I saw rappers on BET and MTV and I saw rappers with chains and I'm like, that dude was just in the hood and he's now making money because he sings about what happened in the hood. Like, okay, I'm going to do that. And a lot of people in areas like that are similar to where I grew up in have a similar experience where they're like, I want to be a rapper because that's the cool thing. And many of us wanted to be a rapper. So when before BET, being a drug dealer was the cool thing. That was like, and Jay-Z talks about that, being the drug dealer, because the drug dealer was the one that was able to afford all these things. So like you wanted to be that. Then MTV comes around, BET comes around, and you're like, hey, you're telling me I could live a lifestyle where I could just rap about what I see and I'm gonna make money? I want to do that. And then now we go on Instagram, we go on Facebook, you see entrepreneurs, an entrepreneur who's flashing a Rolls Royce and they're like, I dropped 500 grand and because I sold 500 units of my $1,000 course. Like, oh my gosh, that's all I need to do is create a course and I'm going to drive a Rolls Royce. So people go on this journey of hopping through different journeys. I think that they're interested in the flash and not interested in the sustainability. So what I would ask someone deep down is, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? I think for me, Craig, it's in my blood. At 9, 10 years old, I'm knocking on doors, going through rejection to make $1. I didn't see it on Instagram. I didn't see it on Facebook. What I did is I noticed my mom do it when I was a little baby. And in my journey, I said, you know what? I'm going to stay in this game and it's hard for me to work for someone. I haven't worked for someone since I was 19. I haven't worked for somebody. Right, since I was 19, and since I was 18, and between 18 to 19, I was really in a mentorship program a franchise, a T-Mobile franchise, and that's how I learned the T-Mobile game. So it was really a year of mentorship before I started my own location, and that's the last time I worked for somebody, right, on a W-2. And I'm 29 now. So I share that with you is because like that's innately in my blood. But if someone sees it on Instagram and you're taking that leap of faith because you're saying, I saw someone else do it, if you're 100% committed, you got to be 100% committed to the problems that comes with it. If you're 100% committed to that, then you got to be 100% committed to the challenges and problems of being an entrepreneur if you want the result. Now, look, if you're not 100% committed to the challenges that come with it, choose what you can commit to. For some people, it's to being the best number two man. Like if you're the entrepreneur and I can get behind you and I'm be like, look, I'm never going to take as much risk as you. I'm never going to cold call someone cold and I don't know. I'm never going to go to a networking event and step on a stage with a bunch of strangers. I'm never going to do that. However, what I will do is once you get the customer, I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to retain them. I'm going to fulfill the program. I'm going to understand your vision and I'm going to put it to play and I will grind day in and day out. That might be your best opportunity, is being the best number two person. So you got to ask yourself, like, what is your opportunity and make a decision from there so that way you can create success. There's too many number two people thinking that they got to be number one and that's where they're going to create success. There's more number two people who are starting businesses and part of that statistic, failing year in and year out, making less than 100 grand a year, or maybe most of them probably making less than 50 grand a year in their business. And they would probably be making more money just being a good number two person.
I think it's been overhyped and it seems sexier than it really is to be the entrepreneur. One of my mentors talks about entrepreneur versus intrapreneur. Dude, there's some really high paid intrapreneurs and you don't deal with a massive amount of the stress that an entrepreneur is going to go through. Yeah. You got to want it. It's got to make you almost violently sick to think about it not being your thing to do that. And so, and it's not a bad thing to reflect on that and go, I'm the intrapreneur, not the entrepreneur.
What do you resonate with, entrepreneur or the entrepreneur?
Definitely entrepreneur. I was posed with that question whenever I was starting this business over 8 years ago. I was working for Walmart. I worked corporate in their technology division for almost a decade. And I had one foot in there and one foot in this. And my mentor, Garrett, was like, dude, you got to make a choice. Are you the entrepreneur? Do you need to do your own thing? Does it make you feel like you are not fulfilling your purpose in life? Or are you the entrepreneur, in which case stick with Walmart and grow that career? You're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
Commit.
And I had to choose.
Commit. That's what creates success, man, is when you commit. If you can't commit, man, don't even bother. Commit to your opportunity. That makes sense for you. Entrepreneur. That's really good. That's really good, Craig. What else you got, man? What are you creating? I love this.
Well, let's rewind back to kid to now. Let's look through that. Going through high school, another common thread that I see is competitiveness. How competitive were you as a kid? Did you play sports? Did you do anything? Chess? Anything competitive?
Not chess. Basketball. I was on the varsity for basketball. Very competitive, just mentally, but more so on myself. And I think that journey was more of a discovery of myself and recognizing that nothing is going to be given to you. I'll give you a scenario. For the first 3 years of high school, I made the varsity team, and it was like almost expected. I did a freshman year in high school, varsity basketball, which is the highest level of basketball. I made the team on freshman year. And then second year, I made the team again. I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I know the coach. I know the team members. Like, we're a team. Sophomore year, I made the varsity team. Junior year, I made the varsity team. And then my coach, Coach Johnson, decided to retire. And then my gym coach at the time, Mr. Meekins, ends up coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to be the new coach for the varsity team. And I was like, I remember being in the hallway towards the end of my junior year. I was like, Mr. Meekins, I'm going to see you on varsity next year. And he says, what makes you think you're going to get on varsity? And my heart just dropped. And I said, what do you mean? I've been on varsity the last 3 years. Why would I not make it on varsity? He's like, you still got to try out. I don't know if you're going to make it. You still got to try out next year when you come back from the summer. And I was like, Mr. Meekins, how could you tell me that, man? I've been varsity for all the last 3 years. I've been varsity. I've been playing varsity. I've traveled with the team. How are you gonna? What do you mean you got to try out? I'm about to be a senior. And he's like, you are just like everyone else. You got to try out. If you want the spot, you can take it. And for the first time ever during the summer, I practiced. I remember I stayed up late nights. There's a park next to my house. I'm doing right hand drills, left hand drills. And I'm just playing this idea in my head of me trying out and him, my coach saying either A, you're not going to make any of the teams, or B, you're on junior varsity, which is like a lower standard. You know, you don't have the crowd cheering. You know, you're traveling with the young people who can't even throw a rock. Like it was like I was playing this idea in my head that I was not going to make the varsity team. And that's the first time ever in that season that I actually practiced during the summer because I was nervous. I taken that same principle and I applied it to my business and my life every single day. Because I played the scenario of like, even if I build a sustainable large business, I play the scenario like, okay, what if this shit tanks? What if there's an apocalypse? What if there's a 2008? I heard about 2008. I wasn't a part of the economy that back then. I was in 8th grade in 2008. So I wasn't a part of the economy. I said, what if that happens again? So I play all these scenarios in my head, which tells me I'm never going to quit. So what I did was I called myself in 12th grade. I called myself Can't Quit Andy. So if you go to my high school yearbook, you'll see Can't Quit Andy. If you go to my teachers, you say, hey, do you know Can't Quit? They'll be like, I know Can't Quit Andy. Because during that summer, I said, I can't quit because I can't fuck this opportunity up. That translated to the rest of my life. Still to this day, I still have that mindset where like, I still got to practice. I have a speaking engagement. I've done hundreds of different seminars and webinars. Just on the webinar game, I've done over 300 since the pandemic, 300 webinars. I just did one yesterday where I bring in hundreds of people to come to my event where I sell my software to them. And in just still today, I still get nervous and I'm like, what if I fuck this up? And I practice and I practice and I practice and I practice, get better and get better. All of that came from this experience that I had in high school.
Do you think people just starting out are going to be able to show up and perform to your level and sell something? I just did a Facebook Live on this is why I'm asking. I get this impression that people pick certain opportunities because they feel like it's going to be easy. And then they show up and instead of putting in the work to understand what their customers want, to create a better product, service, customer service, etc., they're just expecting they're going to show up.
I've seen it time and time again. So I've done over 300 webinars myself. I do them very often. I do them for other people, for some big brands and some big speakers that I host their webinars in their systems, right? So I've been practicing this. My first webinar, I got 0 sales. Not one person purchased my product or my service, right? And I was nervous. Palms were sweaty. I had a suit on me. I was like, yesterday I did a webinar in sweatpants, right? But before I was like coming in a suit, I came in with a different demeanor. I wasn't confident and so on and so forth. And I believe what ends up happening, because right now I'm coaching over 280 different people inside of High Level to do their own webinars to sell their version of the platform. And I noticed that there are people who have this like chip on their shoulder and they'll be like, I saw what you did. I saw the recording. I'll just do what you did. And I'm like, okay, you can do what I did. Because they're looking at it as I just spoke. Every single word that comes out of my mouth is part of a presentation that was pre-written and pre-planned. Every single story. I'm not pulling stories out of the air. Every single story, every single verbiage, every single high pitch, low pitch, every single slide point, PowerPoint presentation has a specific reason on the psychological mind to get that person to see the value of my product and ultimately make a decision to enhance their life and enhance their business by doing business with us. But to the untrained eye, what they see is, all he did was sell. All he did was just ask that person to buy. I could do that. So there's a skill set, there's a learning process to that took me years. Since between 2016 and 2018, I traveled with the #1 motivational speaker, Les Brown, from city to city. And my job was to fill up his seminars and pack out the rooms for him. I had to learn a skill to convince people or persuade people to see the value of my ticket and come see Les Brown, a motivational speaker. That skill set was created by practice. If someone was watching this presentation or this recording and they're like, shit, I could do what Les Brown does, or I could do what Grant Cardone does, or I could do what Andy Audate does because I saw him do it one time and I could do it again, unfortunately, you're mistaken. It takes practice and consistent activity. engage in persistent activity to create that level of success. And I think today, man, if you want to outwit statistics, you can't just see someone on Instagram and Facebook and just say, "How I'm gonna do that," and expect the same results. What you can do is see that person, make an effort, and then go through the commitment period, which is going to be your learning curve. And then over time, you'll see those results. But like I said in the beginning of the show, you're going to go through that commitment period regardless. If you stick through the commitment period, that's how you can outwit statistics and and get to a level of being elite. But if you don't play ball in that commitment period, you're going to end up failing anyway. And you're going to be part of the statistics. And the next year, you're going to need a new project. The year after that, you're going to need a new project. And after 10 years, you're going to end up looking back in the last 10 years, and you're going to be like, shit, I've done 17 different businesses and none of them have been successful.
So what you're saying is, just like the coach, you're going to have to practice so you can try out if you want to succeed. Is that right?
For sure, man. For sure. It's a game of practice, but most people don't commit, man. That's what I found to be the actual challenge. It's not a technical problem. It's not the right software, having the wrong software. It's not having the wrong coach, not having the wrong mentor. It's about not committing, because you're going to learn at every single stage of what to do or what not to do.
Do you think that successful entrepreneurs are egotistical and arrogant, or humble? The most successful ones.
I think that there's a strong ego that is tamed, and that's where the world will perceive it to be humble. Because
is it an ego or confidence then? Because I think those can be separated maybe.
Yeah, so they could be separated. Many would say ego is when you edge God out, so you take away God from the picture. So if we're talking about from that level, as if I'm the creator of it, then yeah, that's not going to work, because you take away God from anything, it's going to be ineffective. So then if we're going to use confidence as the term, where it's like, hey, I believe I can create this with God's support. I believe I can create this. And that level of confidence, a lot of people just can't relate to that. But an entrepreneur is going to innately, I know for me, I'll be honest with me, a lot of people are not around me, but a lot of people that I've experienced in this world over the last 20 years lack confidence, and they put their lack of confidence in themselves onto me. So like my mom would say, how could you start a business? Hey, you're only 19. Or my friends would be like, dude, you got to go to college, man. We're all going to college. We graduated 12th grade. We're all going to college. And I'm like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, dude. I just did this 4 years because I legally had to in high school. And I started believing some people. And so I lacked, there was a moment, this little sliver, I called it a semester, where I lacked a little bit of confidence in myself. And I said, all right, I'll go to college. So I did a semester in school. During the whole semester, I realized like college is not for me, because I already had confidence in what I wanted to create. So I believe entrepreneurs have a tremendous level of confidence, because you're taking the biggest gamble, not on your product, not on your offer, but on yourself. And you need confidence in order to make that happen. So you're taking this biggest gamble, and you can't be humble, man. You can't be humble and have that level of confidence. You can tame your confidence, and other people may perceive it as being humble. But I don't believe naturally entrepreneurs are humble. I believe naturally they go against so much opposition that they have to psych themselves up on a day-to-day basis and be like, no, I can make $1 million, or I can make $100,000, or I can make $1,000, or I can make a sale, or I can do a webinar, because the world is going to tell them no. You can't be humble and go against that level of friction. You think Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook, man, and the amount of friction that he created and had to endure, that he was like, I'm going to be humble and I'm going to just not share about my successes. No, he wakes up in the morning and he's telling himself like, yo, I just created the biggest, baddest motherfucking app on the planet, and I'm going to go buy Instagram for $1 billion. Like, that takes a tremendous level of confidence, which translates to his results and your results as an entrepreneur. But I do think that there's a fight against people's comfort zone and entrepreneurs that are in action right now. And the lack of belief of most people on the planet who don't believe in themselves, don't believe in what their outcome could be, they're putting that information onto entrepreneurs. And that's where an entrepreneur has to play themselves down so that way they can blend in.
Well, we'll go back to this for a second. You indicated that there was a time period that you went to school temporarily, and it was because of this doubt that was created. I'm curious if you see a trend amongst the people that you coach right now, or even yourself at that time, how you address your environment. Because we're at the time of recording this 2 weeks into January.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody's setting their New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to lose this much weight, yada, yada, yada. And I think environment control is incredibly important to that aspect. So I'm curious how you walked yourself out of that feeling of inadequacy or concern or worry that led you to go to school.
I was working a job at Wendy's. Okay. I was working a job at Wendy's, and everyone around me is telling me, like, because I didn't go to school, I work at Wendy's. I was already working at Wendy's, and I was like, I don't want to go to school. I want to start a business. But at the time, I didn't have a product. I didn't have an offer. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't have that confidence. I didn't have anyone around me teaching me how to sell. I didn't have anyone that was actually in the practice. But in my heart, I knew what I wanted to see. And then, so I said, okay, I want to start a business. I just didn't know what business it was. And then I realized the fundamental skill that I needed was sales. I need to learn how to sell. So I went to T-Mobile corporate. I went to a T-Mobile corporate store because at the time I had a T-Mobile phone. And I went to T-Mobile corporate store and I said, would you guys hire me? And T-Mobile, the manager of that location said no, because at the time I was like 16 or 17. He said no. So I went down the street to another company called Metro PCS. Today it's a T-Mobile franchise. Back then it wasn't. So it was called Metro PCS. And so I went down to Metro PCS. Now the way that Metro PCS works is that you can buy a territory and put their logo and do business as Metro PCS and sell their phones, and you make a commission. You make a commission on every time someone comes and pays. You make revenue and profit when someone buys a case from you, when someone buys a phone, and so on and so forth. So I went down the store to a Metro PCS dealer. At the time, he had 10 locations with Metro PCS, and I said to the people, I said, "Hey, T-Mobile is not giving me an opportunity, but would you guys?" And the gentleman behind the desk said, "Yeah, sure, you can apply." So I applied there. And then I went down the street to another Metro PCS, and I applied at that second Metro PCS. So I got into this groove of trying cell phone stores. For whatever reason, I got into this groove of trying cell phone stores. So I went to all these Metro PCS stores, and I applied. Come to find out, Craig, it was all the same owner. Come to find out, it was the dealer that ended up owning all of these in one specific territory, because you buy the territory. So it was the same owner. I didn't know that. The first location that I went to, the guy was on edge. I ended up getting hired at another location, but the first location, the guy was on the edge with his job. So what he was doing, he was taking applications and ripping them up and throwing them. That's back when he had paper applications. So he's ripping them up. So come to find out, the first location that I went to didn't even get the application submitted. It wasn't until I went to like my second or third location that person was an overseer of all of these locations, and she was the one that was recruiting. So she recruited me. I came into work. She trained me, and the first guy, I ended up being his boss. I ended up being his manager. The first guy that was already on edge. Now, Metro PCS hired me. In the journey of this Metro PCS location of being in the store, the owner of this dealership, the cell phone dealership, he owned 10 locations. He was a black man, just like me. I've never seen a black man be successful. Never. And never in a legitimate legal way. I've never seen it happen, be successful. So it changed all my belief system. So when I share with you about get around the right environment, Craig, and the audience, is that you want to actively pursue people you want to be around, be like, and get around that type of person. So I went to this guy. I went to the owner of the location. I said, I didn't know that you are a black man who runs this business. He has 10 locations. He's never just sitting at one. So after a few months of working for him, that's when I found out a black man owned the business. And then, so I said, I want to work around you. I got transferred to the location that he spends the most time at. And then I was working in front of the store. His office was behind me. So he's on the phone doing payroll and doing credit card and figuring out how to convert, a location into a Subway restaurant into a cell phone store. So he's actively expanding his business. And I'm just this 17, 18-year-old listening in and just like tuning in to listen of what's going on. And then his right hand, his number two man, who's another black man. So it's two black guys that run this business. His right hand man comes up to me and says, Andy, why are you trying to go to college? I said, my mom told me to go to college. My friends when I worked at Wendy's told me to go to college. I'm just at college because everyone at high school, he said, drop out and learn sales and build a business. I said, that's what I need to know. But I said, hey, aren't you aren't you just trying to tell me that so I could work for you more? So this level of doubt still is coming in regardless. Like, it's in my heart already. I already knew I want to be a business owner, and this level of doubt is happening. He says, drop out and be a business owner and learn the sales. And I said to him, I said, you're just trying to have me work for you. He's like, no, you need a skill set that's going to allow you to create revenue. That's why people go to schools, to learn how to make money. If you can learn how to make money by having the skill set, you'll be set for the rest of your life. I didn't believe it until 3 months later. I went to school. I kept on going to school like my mom told me, like everyone told me. And I was just like, dude, my business teacher in school in the first semester, I said, sir, I'm going to be transparent with everyone. If that's cool, everyone, I'm in a classroom with maybe 25 people. I said, how much money do you make? And then he's like, what? How could you ask me that? And I said, I just want to know how much money you make, because you're teaching me how to run a business. You're telling me why Coca-Cola's logo is red. And I don't know if that helps me. Like, I don't know if that's actually going to help me in business school. And he said to me, I'll talk to you after class. He talks to me after class, 75,000. I said, okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know. I went back to the guy who I was working for. I said, how much do you make? He said, oh shit, 1.2 million. I said, all right, that's enough said. I dropped out of school. I stayed with this guy for another year. He taught me how to greet, how to qualify, how to present, how to close. By my 18th and a half birthday, I'm 6 months in working around this guy. He says, Andy, I believe in you so much. I want you to run a store that's failing right now. I have 10 stores that I own. My number 10 store is terrible. It's currently in a mall. It's a slow location. I want you to run that store and see if you can revive it for me. Otherwise, I'm going to close it down. I said, all right, baby, put me up to the project. I go into the location. I'm now this 18-year-old, and I got people who are 26, 32, 45 that are working for me. And I go to my manager and I said, hey, my boss, who doesn't work at the store, I'm now the manager of this location. But I go to my boss and I say, hey, what do you want me to do with these employees? Like, how do you want me to revive the store? He said, figure it out. That's why I hired you to be there, figure it out. I said, these 3 people that are working for me, man, I can't, they're not going to create results. He said, clear house. I said, you want me to fire them? He said, figure it out, dude. Just commit to the deal. So I fired him. And throughout this whole entire journey, he's teaching me and coaching me on how to make his business successful. I'm listening to everything he says. He says, fire them. I fired them. He says, hire new people. I hire new people. The type of people to hire, I hire those new people. I learned the skill of sales. He taught me everything. And then within six months of that, in this mentorship experience, my store goes from number 10 to number 2 in that company. We spiked up in revenue and spiked up in sales. And then that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to try it myself. And that's when I opened up my first location. T-Mobile just acquired Metro PCS, and that's when we started. That's when I opened up their Metro PCS division in the East Coast. That was that journey. The reason environment is so valuable is I was on my way to a path of like becoming like a business, I don't know, entrepreneur. I mean, I would have just done business management and go work for somebody, go work for Coca-Cola, go work for Honeywell or something like that. But instead, I got around the right type of people who engraved the idea of entrepreneurship and success in my mindset. Environment is everything.
Environment is everything. So I'm gonna extract some things from there. First of all, what you did with your teacher and then asking your mentor how much he made is exactly why I have you guys announce what you guys make. Because whoever's listening right now, Andy is successful. He's been successful. He owns the right to your respect to listen to what he's sharing with you. Everything he's sharing is valuable, whether you realize it or not. Number 2, let's play a game of what ifs. What if, and we're going to play this game of what if for the audience, because the reason so many businesses fail is they give up before they get to the right place. They're 3 feet from gold, as the saying goes, right? So let's play a game of Andy didn't get out of the environment of Wendy's. He stayed there and let them continue to tell him that the reason he works for Wendy's is because he's not going to college and that he needs to go to college. You hear that day in and day out, and he would have stayed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets out. That's the first good thing he does. But there was a crossroads there. You had to make that decision. I got to get away from this. I got to get away from this negativity. And I don't know about you, but I'm ruthless about who I will be in communication with. If I have a big goal and somebody's saying anything about it that would distract me or turn me away from it, cut off. I don't care who you are. Done. You're dead to me. We're not going to talk until I've reached a place that I feel confident that it doesn't matter how much you yeah, or I've proven it so much that you can't come in and say anything about it. I had a friend when I first started my business that was like, you're not going to find anybody that'll pay you $500 a month to manage their Google. $500 a month.
Yeah.
I laugh my ass off now because I've had customers pay us as much as $50,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, if he were to say that, it'd just be ludicrous and ridiculous. So control your environment. But crossroad number one, he left. Number two, he started searching for a business environment that would have been more suitable. But he put in one application. If you went, oh, that's enough, I put in enough effort and left it there, he would have never got hired. He would have never found himself in that environment. He went to every freaking store in the area, and it just so happened to be owned by the same person, thank goodness. But had he not gone to the next store, he'd been like, well, I put in an application, work's done, I'm done. Never would have heard back from him. Never would have been set on this path. Never would have met that man. Never would be where he is today. Number two, yes, he got hired because he went and put in the applications. But then being introduced to this man, seeing this man's success, and insisting upon being mentored by him, which is not always easy to do. I've had many mentors in my life at this point, and sometimes convincing those people that it's worth their time and energy, because it's going to cost them time and energy. You feel like, oh, I'll work for you for free or whatever. That's a load of horse shit. It's still going to cost them time and energy to spend time with you. So you're going to have to do more. And he did that more. I don't know that he elaborated in his story if he wants to share now, but he did more, or that guy would not have taken an interest in him and started mentoring him the way he did.
What I found, man, is that you got to pay for mentorship. Even the book that you just mentioned, 3 Feet from Gold, the authors of those books, Greg Reed and Sharon Lechter, they're both clients and friends of mine. And the value of the relationship, mentorship, you got to pay for. So in that scenario, what I realized, there's a couple of ways you got to pay. I think that from what I recall, there's 5 currencies. Number one, there's time, or what I call energy. So I paid in energy because I worked for the guy. So he used my energy, my resource of energy, to help make him a profit. But I received the second currency, which is knowledge. So you can pay in different ways. It's not just money. People are just always like, it's like real estate. You hear those advertisements, buy a house, no money down. And it's like, how could you do that? There's other ways you can pay. So in mentorship, there's a few ways. Number one, I just shared, which is going to be energy. Number two is going to be knowledge, giving someone information. Number three is going to be the actual cash revenue, like currency, money. So you can pay cash. I could pay you $15,000 for an hour of your time for me to learn that one specific nugget. Number three is going to be barter. That's exchanging something, like for like, some type of exchange that we're going to create. And the last one is relationships. So that, like, for example, if I wanted to go speak on stage and Oprah Winfrey's having an event and there's 100,000 people at the event, or there's viewers of over 100,000 people viewing this specific event Oprah is having, and I say, Oprah, can I speak on your stage? And Oprah's like, who the heck are you? No, like Andy, let me Google you. Now I'm Googleable, but maybe Oprah is not going to recognize me to the way that someone in the Go High Level community might, right? Or an entrepreneur might. However, she may say, what can you do? And I say, I know you've been trying to get Barack Obama. Barack Obama happens to be a good friend of mine. I have him on speed dial. You've been trying to get him. If I get Barack Obama to speak on your stage, would you give me a slot as well? And Oprah says, I've been trying to get Barack for a few years, man. If you can get Barack on my stage, I will for sure give you a spot. So now, instead of me paying money, I can pay in a relationship. So there's different ways that you can pay for this mentorship or to get what you want. And in that scenario, I paid for it with my energy. And he, in addition to him giving me money, because I worked for commission, but he also gave me knowledge that has been with me. I mean, even the book that you mentioned earlier, 3 Feet from Gold. I remember I had a meeting with Sharon Lechter. And she was telling me everything that came out of her mouth in our meeting, or a few meetings that we've had. She's like, I'm building an asset. So we do her marketing campaigns, and she's like, I'm building an asset. And my mindset has completely shifted the value of a funnel, just because I now understand what assets are. And I remember Greg Reed himself, I went to his house, and when I went to his house, we were spending some time together, and he was telling me the difference of essentially what he would tell Tony Robbins when he was in his early 20s. And I said, Greg, what would you tell? Because Greg was like, let me tell you something, Andy. I was at his house, and he says, you're in your 20s, man, young man. Let me tell you something. Here's what you want to do different. You want to build a business. I said, what do you mean by that? Because at the time, everything was Andy Audate. There was no Progretta. There was no business name. Everything was my name. And he said, when Tony built his business, everything was around his name. So it forced him to be on stage, even in his latter years. In order for him to create an impact financially, he still has to get on stage. But you have an opportunity to go in a different direction. You can still be on stages, but you got to build businesses that don't revolve around your specific name. And I said, Greg, that opened up my mind, that shifted my mind. That's when things changed. And I started naming assets. So one thing I learned from Sharon is build assets. One thing I learned from Greg is to build assets that are not dependent on your name or you to show up. Completely changed the direction of my life. So at every stage in my journey, that was just very recent. So at every stage of my life, whether I'm talking about the two black men who happen to run cell phone stores on the East Coast, or now I'm living on the West Coast running a 7-figure marketing agency and a software company, that all of these stages happened with mentorship and guidance from people who were much more smarter than me, created much more results. And so if you're wanting to outwit the statistics, if you're wanting to become elite, the solution is quite simple. There's a process, and that process is experience the commitment period, whatever it may look like. That commitment period when I was 18 years old was I had to make multiple application submissions. I stayed in the game. But what happens after is that you're going to be around different people. By any means, do whatever it takes to spend time with them, to get around the social circle, so that way you can develop a new skill and develop a new mindset. And that's how your life is going to change.
What do you think the single most important skill set an entrepreneur starting a business needs?
Sales. You got to learn how to sell your product, sell your idea. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. Everything comes around with. I got a puppy on the floor doing this podcast who will jump around, do some crazy stuff. Man, I got to sell it to him. I got to sell him that, hey man, relax. I'm going to be on a podcast for an hour. Relax. Like, hey, just chill out. Right. It's all about sales. So you want to sell your products, sell your team members, sell your vision to your clients, sell your vision to your team members, sell your vision to your wife, sell your vision to your husband, sell your vision to yourself. I mean, you got to sell yourself sometimes. You're going to wake up in the morning and you'll be like, shit, do I really want to do this now? And you got to sell yourself again. And you're constantly playing this game of progression. So you got to learn how to sell. Everything else will have. Okay, you can hire a marketing agency, you can hire operations, you can hire fulfillment, you can hire everything. But the sales in the beginning, it has to be you.
I think sales, sometimes people acquaint with some negativity. You think like used car salesman. Tell me what true sales is not.
What true sales is not?
What true sales is not. Because everybody's like, well, nobody wants to be sold, and they create this association in their mind of like, well, I'm gonna sell my team on something that has some negative connotation or can. So let's tell them what it's not.
I mean, I don't know what it's not. I'll tell you what it is. I mean, sales is giving your vision of value for someone else, giving them the opportunity to see what you see. That's what sales is. And I love being sold because that changes my perspective. If I'm being sold on something, it's going to allow me to change my perspective. I don't have the answer for everything. I don't know which car to buy. I don't know which cell phone to get based on what I need. It allows the expert to tell me what I need. If their ability to communicate and persuade me to show me the value, that's what sales is. The ability to show value to someone. And I'll give you a quick scenario, man, on this idea of that sales, being salesy or money driven is a bad thing. Today, we're recording this on January 11th. I have a partner that I reached out to and I said, hey, I want to pay for your service up front. I want to give you $10,000. This was on December 29th, right? And I said, I want to buy your service for 10 grand and I got to buy it today. This person took forever to get back to me. Not only just forever to get back to me, but this person was like, hey, let me ask you all these questions. And I'm telling this person, I want to buy your product. And they take me through this whole journey that they think that they're supposed to because some guru taught them or some course taught them. You see, the value for me at that time, in addition to getting this person's service for that $10,000, was that I was going to decrease my tax liability a little bit by that $10,000 investment. December 28th, December 29th, I just started buying a bunch of things, right? And so I messaged this person, and this person was not the quote unquote the salesperson. They left me hanging.
Shut up and swipe the card, man.
And they left me hanging on this journey that they feel that sales is a bad thing. True story. A couple of weeks later, which is very recently, they come to me with their money problems. I'm not making enough income. I'm not making enough revenue. I'm not making enough this. I'm not making enough that. And I get given the opportunity. Listen, if you are someone who is trying to run a business, if you don't understand that sales is the most valuable thing to your customer, my customers love to be sold. Your customers love to be sold. You love to be sold. You were sold on your cell phone. You were sold on food. You were sold on your car. Let's take away your car away. If you never had the opportunity to buy a car, you'd be walking the streets. You love to be sold. Your customers love to be sold. So selling is just an opportunity to give value. Some marketing agency in, I don't know, the 1970s or the 1950s made selling a bad thing because they were promoting that this other company doesn't sell, and that changed the whole entire arena for sales as if it's a bad thing. This idea of selling is amazing if you take on the opportunity and you latch onto it. It's a skill set, but you got to acquire that skill set if you want to make money in your business.
In telling you his perception of sales and how it should be, I feel like he left space, an abstract of what it is not. And I'll drill down on what I think sales is not. Yeah. True sales, if you're doing it correctly. It is not manipulation. Again, I did a live on this the other day. I see too many businesses failing because they're trying to focus on what they want. And that's where your guy was that wasn't taking the money. Like, he was focused on him and his need to go through this process instead of listening to you and what your desire was. And there's this association of manipulation, or even people flat out, that's what they think they need to do or learn. Frankly, that's what I thought. I thought I was going to learn a special set of words I could say that was going to manipulate this thing to happen. No, sales is about communication and understanding that person's problem, and then communicating whether or not you can take them from their current state to their desired state.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? So now I understand your question even much better, because you're 100% right, man. Sales, when I say understand that skill set of sales, it's understanding the skill set to take their attention off you and put it on another person. That's a skill set in itself. To ask someone questions, just to have like a repertoire of different products or an arsenal of different products and services in your arsenal, and to say, hey, I'm going to take the attention off of what I have and put it on the other person and say, let me ask you questions to understand what you need. You're already in front of me for a reason. You already have a need. Let's get clear on which direction is the best path for you. That's what sales is. So it's not manipulation. And persuasion, when I share persuasion, it's most people before they hear the word yes, they hear the word no. I mean, think about most kids' childhood. They go touch the stove. No, 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 no. They go ask mommy, can I have ice cream? No, 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 no ice cream. So they hear the word no so much that as an adult, anytime they ask a question that is uncommon to them or different, the first thing that they say is, no, 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 no. That's what my mom told me. That's what my uncle told me. That's what so-and-so told me. So persuasion is not just magically manipulating this person, neurolinguistic program that changes this person from a no to a yes. It's, let me just share a different perspective so that way you can make an informed decision. That's all that it is. Persuasion is, I'm going to communicate a different perspective so that way you can make a truly informed decision. Because if I share with you, hey, you can purchase fruits with pesticide that are 99 cents, and then organic fruit, an organic apple that's $1.29, and you look at them and they both look the same, and all you see is a different price tag, 99 cents, and you grab the inorganic fruit with pesticides on it, you take a bite, you're eating pesticides. So persuasion is, let me show you why the pesticide is not good, and that you want to spend the extra 29 cents or the extra 30 cents to get the organic fruit.
Let's fast forward 6 years from now when you have cancer and you're paying for leukemia treatment.
Yeah, that's a different perspective, right? That I was like, oh, that makes sense. I'd rather invest up front than to have to invest on the back end.
Yeah. What is, in your opinion, the second characteristic or skill set that an entrepreneur is going to have to have or is mandatory for success?
Leadership.
In your opinion?
Next one is going to be leadership. Your ability to lead, not just your team members, because in the beginning you may not have team members, but it may be partners, different vendors that fulfill your services or products. It may be leading your customers once you get your customer, right? If they invest into you, you tell them to click a button, they're the ones they're gonna click that button. So you're leading that customer, right? So the first skill set is going to be sales. The next step is going to be leadership. And leadership is showing the person which direction to take and why and how to take that direction.
If I'm incredibly honest, part of the reason I started this business, aside from wanting to spend more time with my family and use it as a cash flowing asset to buy real estate, was the next progression that I was going to have in Walmart to make more money in their home office division was going to be a leadership position. And I was like, I don't want to lead a bunch of people. And then fast forward to now, and I lead a team of people. That's been the hardest one to swallow for me. What do you feel? Because I work with business owners that honestly, they would do so well if they would just hire some people, but they're avoiding it. What would you tell those people?
Get it off your plate and delegate. Get it off your plate and delegate. If you have a product or service that is actually valuable and you believe that it's valuable, by you being the one to do everything in your business, it's a disadvantage to the other people that you could be serving. And I'll give you a scenario. I'll give you a quick example. During this episode, a customer who happens to have my actual personal phone number, who is supposed to be doing an onboarding with our onboarding team right now. So they're on the onboarding call right now, and I got confirmation during this podcast. And they texted me and said, "Hey, I'm a little bit lost on what to do right now on how to get to the onboarding call." So I took a screenshot. I didn't even respond to the message. I just took a screenshot, sent it to one of my staff members, my customer success team, and I said, "Take care of this. I'm on a podcast." It happened to be in the early 2 seconds of this podcast. It started. I got that message. I said, "I want to take care of this customer, get it off my plate," and I delegated it. So 2 people are currently working with this customer while I'm currently recording the show. Number one is our customer success team was able to call that person, get them the Zoom link, guide them to the call, make sure that they're taken care of. And our onboarding team member is now onboarding that customer on a Zoom call while I'm on the show. If you are listening to this episode and you're finding value, this is an output of my value and Craig's value that we can deliver to you. If I was selfish, I would want to do everything by myself. So that customer who's currently being onboarded, I would tell her, "I'm sorry, I'm on a podcast. Please wait. I'll onboard you later." Now, when I say I'll onboard you later, I won't be able to spend time with my puppy. I won't be able to spend time with my wife. I won't be able to call my mom. I won't be able to, because I'm doing onboarding. So I'm constantly pushing these things back that are supposed to be valuable time for me or valuable time for my customer. And instead of doing that, I'm able to serve more people at once when you get it off your plate and delegate. So use this example as a way to understand that if you decide to do everything by yourself, that is probably one of the most selfish acts that you can do as an entrepreneur. Because
you're limiting your impact.
You're limiting your impact to whatever you as a human can do. You're limiting the value that you can put into this world. Rather than if you get it off your plate and delegate, you'll be able to serve more people. Your visions and your ideas can come truer much faster. And the amount of people that you can impact will be greater because the people that you lead, so you sell them, you lead, the people that you lead now, the people underneath your leadership are just extensions of you. My onboarding team, my staff, I got over 80 people that work in my organization. All of them are just extensions of my vision. And they're able to operate in my vision. And that's what a true entrepreneur does. It's not that you just start a business and you're the only person that people can call and do everything for. That is a job. You're self-employed. And on top of that, your impact is much more limited. Get it off your plate and delegate so that way you can have a bigger impact. And that's what I would say to that person, Craig.
But Andy, people are so lazy and they don't show up to work and, they don't do it as well as I can and etc.
That's because you're lazy and that's because you don't show up to work. That's why.
Okay. So for that response, are we saying that through leading by a good example alone, that will solve that problem?
100%. 100%.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Fair enough.
So let's dive deeper into that. How, if I have a person that does have a poor attitude, doesn't show up, is not interested in progressing, up leveling their skills, through my example, will become better than themselves. I do agree that you do have to level yourself up and you do have to show up at a high level to lead appropriately. But I don't think that in and of itself solves the problem entirely.
Most of them end up outing themselves because they recognize they don't fit in the totem pole, in the social circle that you created. So most of them will quit on you. Most of them will leave in the first place. So if you're experiencing that people aren't...
So what you're telling me is that I won't be able to right out of the gate hire the right person and it work magically?
I mean, it could. It's possible. I mean, you're able to. There's a lot of things you could do right out of the gate that will magically work, but 9 times out of 10 it doesn't. However, what I'm sharing with you is that you're the example. If you show up late, if you set a call, if you set a meeting with your staff. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick example. I'm going to give you real life example. My team has a meeting at 8:50 a.m. every single morning. In the beginning, when I started this 8:50 a.m. meeting, we had a Zoom call in the morning at 8:50. When I started showing up at 8:51, my staff started showing up at 8:51. Then next thing you know, 8:52. The next thing you know, 8:53. And then I had to take a moment and reflect. I said, why is my staff showing up at this time? What's going on? And instead of blaming the person, I looked at myself and I said, oh, shoot, I didn't show up on time. So what I did is I readjusted, and without telling them, I showed up at 8:50 every single time on the dot for our meeting for 2 years. Guess what happened? Magically, the team adjusted, and they were all showing up at 8:50 a.m. I didn't have to tell them. I was just like, hey, I've been here waiting for you. The meeting started at 8:50. I was here waiting for you. And the next thing you know, the whole team starts showing up at 8:50 on the dot. And the next thing you know, because the meeting starts exactly at 8:50 on the dot, it's not 8:50:01 seconds, 8:50 on the dot. All right, my team magically started showing up at 8:48 on the dot every single time, every single day. Then I stepped away from the meeting. I don't even join that meeting anymore. It's been like 2 years since I joined that meeting. And I get an alert every single time that the meeting starts. Still to this day, something I started many years ago, still to this day, my team shows up at 8:50 on the dot, something that I had set. Now, I'm a human. I make mistakes. Stuff happens. Challenges happen. So I'll give you another scenario. The same team that shows up at 8:50, we were in the Philippines a couple of weeks ago. And we were having a team meeting with my leadership team. I got a leadership team of 7. And we had a team meeting, and we were going to leave the hotel to go out. And when I went to downstairs, it was like 11 o'clock. Everyone meet up downstairs at 11 o'clock. My executive assistant comes in at 11:02. I said, hey, it's 11:02. What's going on? Everything okay? And she's like, I acknowledge that I broke an agreement. I had an agreement with you all. I acknowledge that I broke an agreement. Let me share with you why my assistant did that. It's because anytime that in the last few years that I've ever been late, whether it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, I come to the team and I'm like, hey, team, I acknowledge that I broke an agreement. I told you I was going to be here at 11 o'clock and it's 11:01. Or team, I told you I was going to be here at 1 o'clock and it's 1:02. I acknowledge that I broke an agreement. Here's what you can count on me moving forward. Anytime that I'm going to be late, I'm going to message you up front and let you know that I have a challenge. Okay? So that way we're all on the same page, and that way you can expect me at the right time. Fair enough? And everyone looks at me and agrees. Me as the leader, I'm doing that. So I shared the precedence up front. So if your team's late, no, it's because you're late, my friend. If your team is dragging, it's because you're doing that. They follow you as an example because you set the tone for the team. Everything that your team member is doing incorrectly or flawed, don't go to that person and bitch. Go to yourself, look in the mirror and say, what can I do different to show up as different as a leader to set the tone for my company? And your entire business will change.
I love your message here of assuming responsibility. I'm sure you've read the book Extreme Ownership, right? You're familiar?
I'm familiar with the book. Almost every book that you've mentioned, Outwitting the Devil, 3 Feet from Gold. I would have brought up Think and Grow Rich with what's it, Carnegie? No, Napoleon Hill wrote the book, but when the gentleman who was trying to get his mentor and he wanted Thomas Edison to be his mentor. That's in Think and Grow Rich. I was going to bring that up, but I've read all the books that you said so far besides Extreme Ownership, but I do have it on my shelf. My wife,
the principle stands though, like you're taking as much ownership as possible. And I personally love to take ownership because if I own the responsibility of it, I can now control and change it. I love anything I can get my hands on to control and change it so that my outcome can be better. With that said, a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way is if you are leading by example and you still have that non-compliance, that hard lesson of letting people go, letting them continue to be a hindrance can be a poison to the entire team. I've seen on our own teams where somebody being allowed to continue to break those rules that are there for their own good, to help them have a better life, better career, to help our customers, etc. Their example also bleeds over. Just like yours bleeds over, their example is also going to bleed over. And so making that decision, that hard decision to get rid of them, is necessary. And just reflecting, whenever I started hiring people, I asked many of my mentors, well, how do I find the right people so they don't fuck things up? And quite frankly, the response they gave me was, they're going to. It's how you respond to that that's going to matter. They're going to fuck stuff up in the beginning. And so if you're avoiding it because you know that's going to happen, I think I agree with what Andy said. You need to bite the bullet and get into it. The sooner you do, the sooner you're going to learn the required skill sets to navigate those circumstances.
In over 4 companies that I've started between 2014 to now, from cell phone marketing agency, software, I have 2 software companies. And over the 4 companies that I've started, I've hired over 1,000, whether it's independent contractors or W-2 employees. What I found, now I've hired a lot of people, okay, in this journey. Our T-Mobile store, we hired a ton of people applied. I've hired a lot of people. And what I found is that I would say 9 out of 10 saw their termination coming up. And the team members around them saw their termination coming up because they knew they didn't fit into this culture that was here. They might have been interested and they might have said yes at the application process because they needed money or a job. But what I found is that they saw it all coming up. They saw it all happening. They saw it on the way because they knew their values, their standards didn't fit or correlate with our organization. I'll share with you, for example, this is not by practice. This is not by mishap. This is not intentional. The people on my leadership team, all of them are the breadwinners of their family. All of them are the breadwinners of their family. So there's a mindset when before coming to work for my organization that I need to create success, and I don't want to jump from job to job. I need to create success. So these people rose up through the ranks. And I share that with you is because it starts from the beginning of what you're looking to create. So you'll know if you fit into an organization. If you don't fit in, you got to rise, or you got to raise your standards, or the corporation has to lower their standards. So when I worked at Wendy's over the years, I've just seen it. Their standards have just been lower and lower. Working at a fast food restaurant, they just completely lowered the standards. But a company like mine, the bar is constantly being raised, and we're constantly trying to take our virtual assistants in the Philippines, like they come to work in a uniform where most people, and they have their background, and they're on time for every meeting, when most VAs per se show up in whatever they wore to bed, dark background, or whatever type of background. It was a different standard that we set for everything in our organization. And if you're wanting to change your statistics of you being successful, you got to constantly play this game of progression of your standards. And then the people that work for you in your organization, they're going to start seeing it, and you're going to start seeing it, and it's going to be the inevitable. They're going to end up leaving.
So I really love that you are consistently trying to raise that bar for your team and staff. And I think that's a great example to lead everybody that is interested in hiring or has been having trouble with hiring. Set a high standard, create a culture that they're going to naturally fit in or not. One of the hardest fires that I've ever had to make was somebody that had a great attitude but the wrong skill set. So I'll leave you guys on just one final note on this about hiring people and delegating, which we've agreed. Andy's persuaded us, sold us that it's necessary, mandatory for us to have the highest level of impact. Is those people are not likely to quit. Those are the hard ones to fire, right? The ones that are belligerent and they're frankly assholes, those are easy to fire, right? Yeah. But the ones that have desire to please you but don't have the right skill set, frankly, you're doing them a disservice. And this was so freeing whenever I had this realization. You're doing them a disservice because they're not going to quit on you. And until you let them go, they are struggling. They are struggling so hard. And when you let them go, that frees them to go do something that they're better suited for. They're going to have a better life. Yeah. Now, I know that I've kept you on here. We're coming up on time. So I'm gonna wind it down here. But I can tell that me and you could get into a lot of stuff, and we're gonna have to have you back on soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. Number one, thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend with us. But before we leave, I want you to share 2 books, possibly, that you feel like would be helpful. I usually try to put some resources out there for people that they can go find additional help, and then let everybody know how they could reach out to you or find you if they were interested in working with you directly.
So one of the things that you said was, one of the books I recommend is Good to Great. And the reason why I recommend that book, Good to Great, is because of what you said earlier about having the right person in the wrong place. In that book, it talks about having the right person in the wrong seat. And I'll give you a quick scenario. My executive assistant today, her name is Marikar. My executive assistant today, she was, before she was my executive assistant, before she worked in my organization, she ran a multi-million-dollar bank and in Dubai. And what ended up happening is that bank was in person, and she wanted to experience the work at home life, and the bank wouldn't allow her to work at home. So she looked for an online job, and she came to work for me as an appointment setter. So her job was to call. So she was a good appointment setter. So she would call leads and set up appointments and so on and so forth. And then, but what I found out in testing her skills is that she's actually a great executive assistant. She's good at appointment setting, but she's great at it as being an executive assistant. My business has grown because I'm able to do more meetings, do more impactful stuff, because I have a right hand who's able to do everything that I can't do from an organizational standpoint. So I share that with you as you may have someone that's good, that's okay, or maybe that's someone that's terrible. I'll give you another scenario. Our company manager today, my company manager, Dana, she was an appointment setter, and she was a terrible appointment setter. She went to college for financial and business management, but she came in and she started as an appointment setter. But she was a terrible appointment setter, man. And I was like, man, it's not working. And I said, hey, but we do have a position in our admin support department. Would you like to do some administrative work? So she started off doing some administrative work, and she excelled in that program. She excelled in that career path. And today, she's grown so much that she's seeing weak points in the company, and she's implementing AI. So she couldn't call someone to set up an appointment to save her life. However, she's implementing artificial intelligence, and she dropped our payroll down by an additional 15% because she's implemented AI technology and saying in places where she said, hey, this is inefficient. ChatGPT with Zapier could do this. Let's put that in there, right? So it's not just about how, if you're listening to this and you're like, you know what, man, I'm in that scenario. I need to go find somebody else. Maybe I invite you to look at it like this. Maybe you have the right person, just in the wrong seat. And I learned that in the book, Good to Great. So read that book, Good to Great, if you haven't. And then number 2, to reach out to me, AndyAudate.com. Just go to AndyAudate.com. You'll learn more about our software. You'll learn more about how we help businesses grow. And essentially what you've seen me experience, we just duplicate it in other people. We teach them about how to grow their business and what are the tools and technologies and the processes and what they have to go through to grow their business. So that way they can create success in this new day and age of technology.
Awesome. Again, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us and to share backwards to everybody listening. I hope they're appreciative of it, and I hope that some of the things we talked about today help them beat the statistics.
Craig, thank you so much for having me, my friend.
Awesome. I'll catch you next time. Appreciate it, brother.